There is no argument about this. A fake argument is being created. Khan al-Amar will be evacuated, and very soon.
The Israeli broadsheet Haaretz hinted that the move may be related to, quote, unusual diplomatic statements by both the European Union and the chief prosecutor of the International Court of Justice in The Hague, who said that raising the village could trigger a war crimes investigation. Has Netanyahu caved in to international pressure?
I have a hard time believing that the Prime Minister gave into European pressure. I think his whole game right now is the relationship with President Trump and the United States, and there must have been something behind the scenes there where he said, try to find a way to calm this down. We don't need this headache right now.
Okay, while the buildings were built there illegally, as the High Court of Israel said, Palestinians claim they never get building permits to begin with. So is it fair?
I think that the claim that they're making, that they're never given permits, etc., this is, from my perspective, we sat together in Knesset when we tried to make an effort to work out the whole Bedouin situation and to try to make things with permits, do it properly. I think that you can't have it both ways. You can't, on the one hand, say, if Israel does something illegally, that must be dismantled and the entire world comes together against us on that, but when there's something done on the Palestinian side or on the Arab side, on the non-Jewish side, then somehow they can claim that we're against them. I think you have to say there's sovereignty, there's a Supreme Court, there's a process that we go through. We live in a democratic country. I will respect the Supreme Court's decisions when it might not be in Jewish Israel's favor, but they have to respect it when it's not in their favor.
But these are people, by the peace agreement between Israel and Jordan dealt a blow this week after King Abdullah said he plans to end the lease of 2 areas of land to Israel that was agreed on in annexes to the 1994 peace treaty. Did this whole thing unravel?
Regarding all the issues of the holy sites and the Temple Mount, so many decisions are made based on that agreement, whereas most of Israel would like to see changes when it comes to that. I have a hard time believing as well that he would allow the whole thing to collapse and then Israel would be able to assert itself the way Israelis perhaps want them to do, even regarding that issue as well.
About the peace process, there are reports, well, the non-existent, shall I say, peace process, but there are reports that the Trump administration is mulling recognizing Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital as well as the Israeli capital in a bid to bring the Palestinian Authority President Mohammed Abbas back to the negotiating table. Could this be a problem for Netanyahu?
This could be a major problem for Netanyahu. And I also wanted to mention, on that issue and all the issues we're talking about, you cannot remove the fact that we're in an election year, whether it's a year from now or sooner, from the equation. Every decision that's
Israeli
being made... Israeli election. Every decision that's being made by Prime Minister Netanyahu is with that framework in mind. And for him to have something like that happen, where somehow now all of a sudden the Palestinians are given this kind of recognition, he will be doing everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen, which is why you will see him make other decisions to try to pacify the United States, to try to make sure that something like that doesn't happen, because that would be a major hit to his base and a major hit to his re-election campaign. I feel that I even watched the Prime Minister speak last week in the Knesset. So much of the success in the foreign policy was built on this close relationship with President Trump and the United States. So much of it. And President Trump, he taught the art of the deal. It's all about give and take. There's no way he's going to swing towards one direction and not try to force this to happen. And many of us have seen that for a long time coming, and now everyone's bracing themselves to see what will that be.
All right, I want to move on to the deep divides between left and right in Israel. Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated 23 years ago, but based on the memorial service held for him yesterday, the scars still run very deep. Rabin's granddaughter, Noah Rothman, spoke out against Benjamin Netanyahu at the ceremony as he sat just a few feet away and accused him of deepening polarization in Israeli society. Not long before the anniversary, a day when Israeli society tries to deal with incitement and polarization, a member of Israeli parliament, Oren Chazan, posted a picture on Facebook depicting Chagai Elad, the director of the human rights organization B'Tselem, as a wanted criminal who must be brought to justice, dead or alive. Chazan published a photo after Elad's speech in the United Nations, in which he called upon countries to take actions against Israel. One Israeli lawmaker has complained to police that Chazan is inciting to violence. When you look at Oren Chazan, what he's done there, one has to agree with Noah Rothman, I think, that nothing has been learned after 23 years.
I spoke out against what happened with B'Tselem at the United Nations, and I think that Ambassador Danny Danon...
What do you mean you spoke out about? You spoke about him going to the United Nations?
Going to the United Nations. I don't believe there's any place for Israelis to be going outside of Israel and giving that kind of open criticism, especially United Nations Security Council. I think Ambassador Danny Danon looked at him, called it like it is. He said you're collaborating with the other side, but Israel's different than the rest of the world. Collaborators here aren't killed, aren't silenced in that way.
So why do you don't you want to silence him? I mean, what's wrong with him going?
No, I feel that I can criticize him. I'm not silencing him. I can say I feel it's the wrong thing for someone to go. There's a system in the Israeli army to deal with things that are done improperly. We're a democratic civil society, and that's the way it should be done. And it's an anti-Israel agenda to go there and do that. And it is collaborating with the Palestinians.
But silencing,
for calling for someone's murder, never saying wanted dead or alive. That's exactly what we have to move away from. Disagree, but disagree agreeably.
What do you make of?
I agree with what Dov said. There's a limit. There's a thin line between saying whatever you want, demonstrate, do whatever you want inside the house, but going to the internet, to the entire world, and ask the world to get involved with what's happening in your country. That is something else.
And what do you make of what Noah Rothman said at the memorial service, that this government specifically deepens polarization?
I do happen to believe that there is a tone which is not appropriate in terms of the divisiveness. I think that people
She was blaming specifically this government, though.
Right, I understand
you
that.
Agree with that?
I do feel that there have been statements made both by the Prime Minister and others that cross the line. I think we should disagree with each other strongly, ideological debates, but let's avoid name-calling, let's avoid labeling on both sides. And in this case, if this is the Prime Minister, this is the leadership, they should avoid doing so. We should learn lessons from
So we're entering the election year.
The Prime Minister and other leaders have learned from overseas as well, where they've seen that kind of language somehow riles people up.
The Trump era.
But it creates a divided nation. We should work towards healing that and uniting as a people in Israel.
Okay, that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank my guests, Moshe Feiglin and Dov Lipman. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.